Hi everyone, my name is John Corbett. There's a lot of people know me, Corbettmaths, and this is episode 6 of the Corbettmaths series of videos on lesson ideas. So with this series of videos, my focus is to really give suggestions to teachers, trainee teachers, and even home educators for things they might want to try in their lessons that might be quite interesting or fun, and they've worked for me, so hopefully they're going to work for you as well. Okay. In episode 5, we looked at the mean from frequency tables and how I use jokes whenever I'm teaching that. I find that quite fun. And episode 6 follows on from episode 5, because it would usually be after with the frequency tables. Then what I would then do is I would look at the range, and I would use those jokes to give me the data for those. So we would then work out the range, the mode, and the medians for those as well, and how we would do that from frequency tables. And then I would lead into this, the estimated mean, if that's what the scheme of work says. And again, I used to find teaching the estimated mean quite a procedural thing. We do it for the sake of doing it. It wasn't really that fun, even though students enjoyed getting the questions right and being able to do it. I find that sort of as a teacher, it just sort of lacked a bit of connect, even though you had sometimes real data that you might be doing it for. The students just didn't find it as interesting, perhaps, as I did. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to find, whenever I was teaching the estimated mean, how I could liven it up a bit, make it a bit more interesting for the students and also a bit more interesting for myself. And especially because I was teaching for such a long time and kept coming back to this topic, I wanted to really enjoy it. Whenever I saw it in the scheme of work, I think fantastic, the estimated mean. So for the estimated mean, often I would start the lesson off with some questions, perhaps with one of the Corbettmaths 5 a days, bit of self-promotion. I maybe choose one where there's a mean from frequency tables in there, just to make sure they remember how to do that. And then what I would do is then I would sort of perhaps ask them the question, how old am I? I would ask the students, how old am I? And you would get the students sort of say some random ages, and I'd write them, I'd get a pen and I'd write them on the board, how old do you think I am? And someone would say, oh, you're 35. And I'm like, oh, fantastic, yeah, great. And then I'd go to the next student, how old do you think I am? They might go 62. And I'm like, right, you're in detention, 62. Okay, next one, I'd say, how old do you think I am? And they might say, oh, I think you're 22. And I'm like, oh, fantastic. I think you're just being too kind now. And you go around the room and you get loads of guesses and you write loads of them on the board, maybe not all of them, but just a good number of them. And then you say to the class, what I want to do is I want to work out the mean. So we could make a frequency table. Now, if we made a frequency table, we would have here age. We'd write age here, and then we'd write frequency. But the thing with our guesses, you can see that not many people have chosen the same guess, and the ages have gone from 22 up to 62. And if I was to do the ages, it'd be a really, really big table. You think it's going to go 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, and you're going to have maybe frequency 1, then maybe 0, 0, 0, 0, and it's just going to be such a tall frequency table. It's actually going to be more time consuming making that frequency table than it would be to actually just get all the lists of ages and then just do it in our old-fashioned way of adding up all the guesses and dividing by the number of guesses. So what would be fantastic is if we had a quicker way to work out the class's guess of my age. So what I'm going to do is, rather than using a frequency table, we're going to use a grouped frequency table. So what I'm going to do is, the lowest guess was 20 years old, so I'm going to write here 20. And I'm going to then say that x, the guess, is going to be bigger than or equal to 20. And then for the upper value here, I would tend to want to write 25 here because I'd probably want to do it 20 to 25, 25 to 30, and so on to be a bit more precise. However, whenever I'm doing the first example, particularly with the midpoint, I want the midpoint to be quite intuitive for them as to why we're using that number. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to write 30 here. I'm going to say to the class, okay, so I've written here that the guesses are bigger than or equal to 20 years old, going up to 30. So that'd be for guesses 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 27.5, 28, 29, 29.9, but it wouldn't include 30 because it's saying it's less than 30. So it's all the guesses from 20 up to, but not including 30. And then finally, we've got x is bigger than or equal to 60, but less than 70. So these are our groups. And what we're going to do is we're going to use these groups because rather than having a table going all the way down from 22 to 62, we've got these groups instead. Now, by using groups, it is fantastic in terms of it makes it a bit easier for us. We do lose a little bit of accuracy because whenever we're collecting our data, we're not actually going to know what the raw data is. So here, between 20 and 30, how many people thought it was between 20 and 30 again? Put your hands up. So 4 students might think that my age is from 20 up to, but not including 30 years old. I'd get them to put their hands up to say where they think my age lies. So now we've collected our data, we've got our group frequency table. Now I'm going to sort of say to the class, okay guys, now what we're going to do is we're going to work out the mean. Now with it being a group frequency table, we can actually work out the precise mean because these 4 people, I don't know what their guesses were. They could have all thought I was 20 years old, and thank you very much if you did. All 4 people might have thought I was 29 years old. We do not know their actual guesses in terms of what they think my age will be. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose a fair number, so one number to represent that group. So if it's in between 20 and 30, what one number do you think would be the fairest number that we should use in terms of how would they think I am? So then hopefully they're going to say, well, 25, because 25 is in the middle. It would be the fairest number. If we don't know what they are, some might think that I'm below 25, some people might think I'm above 25, but 25 is in the middle. So 25 is going to be a good guess in terms of how they think I am, okay, in terms of those students. Now there's 4 of them, so we're going to work out the grand total. If we add all those years up, how many years would it be? So if there's 4 people, and we're going to assume that each one of them thinks I'm 25 years old, then we're going to assume that their guess is 25. We've got 25, 25, 25, and 25. And then if we add them all together, that would be the total number of years there. Or a quicker way would be to do 4 times 25, exactly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 columns on here, okay? I'm going to write midpoint, and I'm going to write the fx again, okay? So midpoint. So in terms of these 4 people, we didn't know their guesses, but we're going to assume that each one of them guessed 25 because it's in the middle of 20 and 30. So we're going to write 25 there for the midpoint, is the midpoint. And there's 4 people that we're going to say they've guessed 25 each. If we add them all up, that would be 100, or 4 times 25 is 100. And this one student, definitely in detention, percent between 60 and 70. The midpoint is 65, and the 1 times 65 would just be 65. So that's fantastic. So we've now filled out that fx column. We're now going to add them up to find out what the grand total of all those guesses would be. So we're going to find out how many years there'd be in total for all of those guesses. And that's equal to 1,045. And sometimes we're teaching year 11, that's the age that I think I am, 1,045. So 1,045, that's the grand total of all the guesses. What do we then do in terms of finding the mean? We would divide it by the total frequency. We would divide by how many people there are. Add up the frequencies to see how many guesses there were. And that's equal to 25. Now, sometimes in the question, it'll say how many people there were, and then you don't actually need to add them up. But here, we're going to add them up and see there's 25 people. Okay, so we've now got our total fx, some of the fx column, so the grand total of all the guesses, of what we think are the guesses. And then we've got this 25 people altogether. So if we do our division, that'll give us our estimated mean, is equal to 41.8. And that's not bad. I'm not actually going to say what my age is in this video, but I'll tell the class how old I was, and I'll just say, oh yeah, well actually I'm this age, and I'll work out how far that is in terms of a guess. Now, just one thing, okay, we call that an estimated mean. Can anyone remind me why it's an estimate? And hopefully they'll say, well, because we didn't actually know the numbers, we're guessing, we're using the midpoints here. Okay, that's called an estimated mean. And I was like, guys, that's really close. Okay, so you're close with me, but you probably knew how old I am anyway, because I'm your teacher, and you probably, have heard me mention birthdays and things in the past. What I'm now going to do is we're going to choose some other teachers. And what I would do is I would sort of go around sort of 3 or 4 teachers around the school, and I would ask them would they mind if I'd done this activity with them, and I would get a picture of them, and I'd obviously again ask their permission, and I'd project up the picture, and I would say, okay, we're going to do this frequency table, and we're going to work out our guess for their ages, and we're going to see how close we are. Now, often the students are very interested to see what are the ages and how close the guesses are, and we actually find that whenever you do this activity, you actually get really close to the real answers. And we'll talk about the wisdom of the crowd in a moment, but I wouldn't talk about it yet with the students because we're really just focusing on this estimated mean, using the midpoints, getting the fx column, adding them all up, getting the total frequency and dividing, getting those ages. And then what I would do is I'd perhaps have the pictures of the teachers on the board, would create the frequency tables. Okay, and then what I would do is I'd get the students to help guess the ages of 3 to 4 teachers. We get all those tables and have them on the board, and I'll probably just give them some templates so they can have these in their books as well. And then what they would do is they would then work out the estimated mean for all of those tables, and then I'll reveal the ages of the teachers and see how close they were. And as I mentioned, they'll be hopefully really close to those ages. And so what I find there is that the students they're finding it quite interesting because they're doing it for teachers and trying to guess their ages and things like that. But then after they've done that, then what I would maybe then do is link into the wisdom of the crowd. Okay, then what I would do, just for a bit of fun, is I'd take out a jar of jelly beans. And I've counted how many jelly beans have gone into this. And I said to the class, okay, what we're going to do is we're now going to guess how many jelly beans are in this jar. And actually the closest guess will win this jar of jelly beans. And at this point they're like, what? Wow, this sounds amazing. And what I would do is I would sort of get them to write down a guess, okay? So I'd get them to write down their guesses and sort of, to make sure you don't look at each other's, you just have a guess, you write it on a piece of paper and you put it down. And then once you've done that, okay, what I want you to do is once they've all done that, I want you then to show the person next to you. That's to make sure no one changes it, okay? So show the person next to you what your guess is, okay? And then what we're going to do is, I'm not going to collect in all those guesses now, but I just want to hear some of the values, okay? Now I'm doing this to help me construct what table we're going to make in terms of our frequency table for their guesses. So I'm going to say, okay, can you tell me your guess? Oh, 300. Okay, what was your guess? 200. Did anyone go for a really low number? 50. Anyone from lower than 50? No. Okay, so the lowest guess is 50. Okay, did anyone go for a big number? 700. Oh, I went for 1,000. Anyone bigger than 1,000? No. Okay, so the lowest guess is 50 and the highest guess is 1,000. That's going to help me create the frequency table. And then I'm going to create the frequency table. So maybe from 0 to 200, 200 to 400, 400 to 600, 600 to 800, 800 to 1,000, something like that. And then what we'll do is I'll then sort of collect the frequencies for that in terms of their guesses. And what we're going to do is we're going to work at the estimated mean as the class. Then what I'm going to do is, okay, we've worked at the estimated mean and we've got your guesses as a class. What we're now going to see is who's actually closer. Are you as individuals closer, or is the class as a collective closer? In other words, is the class wiser than the individual, the wisdom of the crowd? And then what we'll do is we'll work out that, we'll see what it is. I'll get them to sort of talk me through it, and we'll get that estimated mean for the class in terms of the class guess for the jelly beans. We'll work out who's the closest one, and hopefully the estimated mean will be closer than the individual. I'll be like, guys, have you seen how good we were at guessing the ages of the teacher, estimating how many jelly beans are in this jar based on our guesses? And that's it. And then actually, if we've got a bit more time, you could go into a bit more work on the estimated mean and some questions on it, some exam questions on it. Or perhaps you could actually just sort of wrap it up there with the estimated mean and do some more sort of explanation in terms of the wisdom of the crowd. Maybe show them some of the videos on the wisdom of the crowd, such as the bull, the competition with the bull, or when in terms of guessing the weight of the bull. Or I think some other mathematicians, I don't know if it's Hannah Fry, Marcus DeSarto, or somebody done some videos on the wisdom of the crowd. But just talking about the fact that sort of in terms of the crowd, the guesses are actually quite good in terms of the guesses that are too high and too low. They often sort of cancel each other out, and then whenever you work out the mean, it's actually pretty close. And then that's it. So that's how I would sort of teach estimated mean. So rather than just giving them some questions, I sort of do it with ages, guessing my age of some teachers in school, obviously getting their permission first, and then I link it into jelly beans and the wisdom of the crowd. And it's just something that I've really enjoyed. Obviously, someone's going to get a jar of jelly beans, so they're going to really enjoy the lesson anyway, and they'll probably share them around with their friends. So they're good luck to their next teacher whenever they've had all that sugar. And that's it. So I really hope you found this episode useful. I'll see you later for the next episode. Cheers. Bye.